Well, good afternoon. Greetings. Thanks for coming along for the Monday edition. This is sort of the Thanksgiving week edition of the Ride Home. Everyone's.
What do you mean, kind of?
Well, everyone's.
I just think it is.
No, I mean, some people are like off today. Some people are taking the whole week off. Some people are going to be, just take off Thanksgiving Day. Some people have Thanksgiving and Friday off. So, make it fit as you can.
I think that we welcome all people who are celebrating Thanksgiving. Regardless of their vacation, regardless of their vacation status.
All right, okay. But for us, we have a mix of topics today that are Thanksgiving-ish.
such a great show today.
Yeah.
3 outstanding guests today. In the 5 o'clock hour, Tish Harrison Warren is going to join us to talk about one of the pieces that she writes weekly for the New York Times. Mm-hmm. We love Tish. She lived in Pittsburgh for a couple of years, but has returned to her native Texas. That's what Texans do.
Go back home. Well, that's what Pittsburghers do, too.
Yeah, you're right. I guess I should probably stop talking about it. I was going to make a comment.
No,
and you
please
just,
don't. No.
Based on what you said, just made what I was going to say silly.
We boomerang. Right.
Gina D'Alfonso is going to be on to talk about C.S. Lewis. Today's the date of his death. Also the date of the assassination of JFK. And the date of Aldous Huxley's death as well.
1963.
Yeah.
I was there.
We'll talk about that. And also David French, senior editor at The Dispatch, will be with us in just a couple minutes to talk about the Rittenhouse verdict, what perhaps we misunderstood.
Good. It's a very nice, calm topic to start the day off with, is it not? Yeah,
I think so.
Sure.
Steeler game last night, John. I want to know what you thought about it at the very end when you were, limping up to the television hoping for a victory. Nope.
Halftime, I was like, I've seen enough. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Mm-hmm. You?
Exactly.
Did you watch the whole thing?
Exactly the same thing, which is unusual for me, I have to tell you. But we drove out to Eastern Pennsylvania on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So we drove 5 hours Saturday morning, and then we drove 5 hours back yesterday.
It's enough.
There was a lot going on, and the first half was so debilitatingly bad
it's horrible.
To someone's emotional condition. Yeah. I think this has to be over.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I have to do tonight?
What? No, please.
Yeah.
What? Really? That's punishment.
Sure. I'm going to go back and watch the tape. Back and watch the second half.
It's done.
Yep. No, I'm watching it.
Okay. God bless you. More power to you.
Yeah, I'm also watching the Pitt Virginia
that was an excellent
that I
game.
missed on Saturday because I was traveling. I was on the road.
Fabulous. Go Pitt.
So tonight's going to be a big football night, and I'm wearing my shirt today.
Nice.
Do you see?
Very good.
For those of you watching on YouTube, The Ride Home is streaming live on YouTube, and I'm wearing my Pitt shirt.
Outstanding. Fabulous.
Let me stand again. See?
It's kind of see it through the microphone there. Okay. Anyway, Pitt looks great. Do they not?
They Kenny look Pickett. Great. I would like Kenny Pickett. He's not going to win the Heisman.
No.
But
Johnny Unitas Award.
I would love to see him get invited to the Heisman, to the final 3 thing. That's that super uncomfortable thing in New York that they do.
That they already know who the winner is, but you're going to stand there anyway.
Do you watch that?
Oh, yeah, I like it.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's okay. Just an award ceremony. It's a lot shorter than the Oscars, I'll tell you that.
It's true.
So there's something to be said. Anyway, as we always do, we get underway. Kath gives us the look at the news stories of the day. So without further ado, Kath, please give us the top 4 at 4.
To do it for you today, John.
Thank you so much.
It's not just a requirement. It's just...
Some days you're less than happy?
Today I'm doing it out of the goodness of my heart.
Very nice.
Number 1. This is for Monday, November 22nd. Did I say that? 2021? I'd like to say it again. Christian Aid Ministries announced that 2 of its 17 missionaries have been released after being held hostage by a Haitian gang. No further information about the individuals was released. Quote, "We have learned that 2 of the hostages in Haiti were released, and we praise God for this. Only limited info can be provided, but we are able to report that the 2 hostages who were released are safe, in good spirits, and being cared for," said a statement from the group.
Outstanding news. Fabulous.
So 15 missionaries still being held hostage. On October 16th, they were kidnapped. Their group includes 5 children. 16 members are U.S. citizens. 1 is Canadian, and the group's Haitian driver was also kidnapped. Christian Aid Ministries said this, quote, "We encourage you to continue to pray for the full resolution of the situation. While we rejoice at this release, our hearts are with the 15 people who are still being held. Continue to lift up the remaining hostages before the Lord."
Outstanding.
That's from Fox News.
Go.
Number 2. The country of Austria went into a major lockdown today to try to break the strong 4th wave of COVID spreading across Europe, while the German health minister Jens Spahn warned that by the end of the winter, quote, "just about everyone in Germany will probably be either vaccinated, recovered, or dead." Immunity will be reached, he said at a Berlin news conference today. The question is whether it's via vaccination or infection, and we empathetically recommend the path via vaccination. So this is not just an Austrian problem, not just a German problem, but it's all over Western and a portion of Eastern Europe as well. More than 2 million new cases each week in Europe, the most since the pandemic began. This is according to today's New York Times. Tens of thousands of people, though, John, are protesting the official crackdowns and vaccine requirements in Austria, the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Italy, Switzerland, and Croatia, with scattered violence and police use of tear gas and water cannons. Many saying they are simply fed up with almost 2 years of intermittent state control over their lives in the name of public health. You get that.
Sure, of course. Who does?
I mean, you get that.
Me? I'm sick of it, too.
We're all sick of it. Anyway, Europe is once again the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, accounting for more than half of the world's reported COVID deaths this month. How about that? The 4 countries with the world's highest rates right now are Austria, Slovakia, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic. Number 3. A lengthy investigation, John, into a variety of allegations against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has found, quote, overwhelming evidence that Cuomo did indeed engage in sexual harassment. The investigation, and this is according to CBS News, which was authorized by the New York State Assembly Judiciary Committee, also included this, that his staff devoted state resources, that's tax dollars, to the production of his 2020 memoir, and substantially revised state COVID-19 reports to combat criticisms of Cuomo's handling of nursing homes battling the pandemic. Wonder how people who pay taxes in the state of New York feel about all of that.
He's gone. That's how they feel about it.
Number 4. Single-use plastic bags. You might like them, but you're not going to be able to find them soon.
Really?
Yes, if a proposal to ban them earns City Council's approval. The legislation introduced by Councilwoman Erica Strasburger today would ban plastic bags in most instances. Rather than using the standard plastic grocery bags, you'd need to bring your own bag, John. One of those little, fabric guys.
I know them
maybe.
well.
And if you don't have one, retailers would instead have to offer a recyclable paper bag for a fee of 15 cents, and that's a minimum. The fee would be listed as a separate charge on your receipt. And you would be publicly shamed.
Of course you would. Let's go.
There would be exceptions, though, for produce bags, meat packaging, pharmacy bags, or bags used to wrap flowers or similar items. Garbage bags and pet waste bags are exempt.
Always exempt.
The ban would eliminate more than 108 million plastic bags annually, according to legislation. Now, how do you get that? I don't know how you know that figure. That seems like a lot.
How many they're selling?
That seems like a lot. That seems like a lot.
That's a lot of bags. You know there's a lot of bags out there. You see the blue bags everywhere.
A single-use plastic bag can take almost 500 years to decompose.
We won't be here.
And that is your top 4 at 4.
All right, very nice.
Now, did you know that outside of cigarette butts, John, which make up a full 1/3 of the litter picked up in Pittsburgh, plastic bags make up 8%?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think it would be higher because they're everywhere.
Is this bothersome to you?
No, it's not bothersome
to me. Do you carry your little bags with you?
Well, I'll say this. In my wife's car, we have a multitudinous
selection of bags.
We do, yes. And, it's not something I look forward to, but I do despise the blue bags.
Okay, here's the question. Do you use the blue bags as a garbage bag in your bathroom or something like that?
Yes.
So what are you going to do now?
I don't know. I'll make something else up.
So I was thinking.
I'll use a paper bag.
I was thinking that we're going to be saving on the grocery bag.
Yeah, but
people are going to have to buy bathroom, trash bags. So it's just a bag. It's a bag and it's a bag.
I guess.
Right?
I don't know how it works.
Okay.
I mean, the blue bags, really, they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous.
They are everywhere.
And so it is a lot of pollution.
But I think we're exchanging bag for bag.
Maybe so. Okay. I don't know.
Listen, I'm happy. I have my Tom Bin bags made by the company in Seattle, Washington.
I'm
happy
special
to have
bags.
Yeah, I do. And I feel good about them.
All right.
Fine. So it doesn't bother me, but I'm just saying. I think we're going bag for bag. I'm not sure how much we're going to get.
Are you blue bag virtue signaling?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little. I'm feeling proud about your blue bags. All right. Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we do come back, David French is with us, senior editor at the Dispatch. Kyle Rittenhouse. To some, he's a patriot. To other, he's a white supremacist. David French says, we're missing the point. We misunderstand this. We'll talk about that next on the ride home. Pittsburgh's Christian Talk. The law has spoken. Kyle Rittenhouse, is he a patriot? Is he a white supremacist? Is he a vigilante, or is someone protecting his own life? David French is back with us. David's a regular guest on our show, senior editor at The Dispatch, an attorney concentrating his practice in constitutional law, a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. His newest book is called Divided We Fall, America's Succession Threat and How We Restore Our Nation. David here to talk to us about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. David, thanks for being with us here today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Always good to see you, David. The Ride Home streaming live on YouTube at The Word Pittsburgh. So if you want to log on to YouTube, you can watch. We've got David French with us on Zoom. All right, David. So let's start here. The he should never have been there viewpoint, though it's valid, right, obviously. It has no bearing on the self-defense claim. Talk to us about that.
Right. So as long as he's there legally, which he was there's a difference between saying he never should have been there as a matter of prudence versus he's trespassing or he's engaged in criminal conduct by being there. He was there where he was there legally. He was possessing the gun at that moment legally. And the court had ultimately threw out a charge related to him possessing the gun. So he was there legally. Whether or not he's there foolishly for imprudent reasons, he's there legally. Once he's there legally, he enjoys a right of self-defense. So if somebody attacks him, he's going to enjoy the exact same right of self-defense that he would enjoy if he was there completely, if it was the smartest thing in the world for him to be there. In other words,
doesn't matter.
The wisdom of your placement in this, in this space did not have a bearing on whether or not he had a right to self-defense. What would have a bearing on whether or not he had a right to self-defense was he provoking the specific encounter that led him to fire his weapon? That would be something that would be directly relevant. So, for example, if he pointed a gun at somebody, which alarmed them and caused them to charge him in self-defense, that would be directly relevant. Right. But a lot of the background controversy about this has been, what if he was there foolishly, if he shouldn't have been there? In other words, we don't want 17-year-olds with rifles walking into unrest. Right. That a lot of people took from that he's then responsible for all that occurred that followed. And that's not the case. That's not the way a self-defense analysis works.
So it's a very narrow, and that's why the charges were dismissed, a very narrow definition of his placement in space and time. Yeah,
it is. Self-defense inquiries are really pretty darn narrow, to tell you the truth. In fact, they really are looking at a very specific set of circumstances and ask whether you felt like you were reasonably believed that you were in fear of death or grave bodily injury. Right. Now, the overall circumstances do matter to the extent that did you provoke it? Did your unlawful conduct provoke it? So, for example, to take an extreme example, if I walk into a bank with a shotgun and I hold somebody up and then someone grabs the shotgun and tries to turn it on me, I don't have a right to shoot them in self-defense, even though they might theoretically take the shotgun away from me and shoot me with it, because I provoked the encounter with unlawful conduct. But walking around armed, open carrying in that circumstance was not the kind of unlawful behavior, or not unlawful at all, that would provoke a self-defense response, right, especially in that first shooting. And so when the videos showed Kyle Rittenhouse running away with somebody chasing him, those videos were extremely powerful evidence for the defense, unless there was some evidence that Rittenhouse had done something unlawful to cause his first, shooting victim to chase him. And so this inquiry is really pretty narrow. It doesn't, you can be foolish in where you are, but even foolish people have rights of self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So as a father, right, you would think if my son was 17 years old, I would forbid him to walk into essentially a riot carrying a firearm. That was completely and totally foolish. It wasn't against the law, though.
Right. I mean, how many listeners, if they see that there's unrest in their city, are going to say, son, stop studying biology. Here's a rifle. Go downtown. I mean, you don't do that. Right. There's a lot of reasons why you don't do that. And so that part of it, unfortunately, there's a lot of people on the right who kind of have celebrated the fact that this kid took a rifle and went downtown. They shouldn't celebrate that. But that doesn't mean just because he took that rifle and went downtown that he didn't enjoy the right of self-defense while he was there. And so this is something that I think a lot of people missed is they went straight from there. He's there recklessly and irresponsibly with a weapon, and he shot and killed 2 people and wounded a 3rd person. Therefore, he must be held specifically responsible for those shootings. When the law says, whoa, hold on, we're going to look at the circumstances of each shooting, and each shooting is evaluated on the specific circumstances immediately preceding it.
Right. So here we are in America, though, right? So some people say this boy is a patriot. Other people say this boy is a white supremacist. There's a lot of room in between the two to come up with some sort of thing that's reasonable, even though it doesn't make sense.
Well, there's room between villain and hero. And we don't have any evidence necessarily these white supremacists. Yeah. But, what I would say is he was deeply misguided. He did a very foolish thing. And what ended up happening what occurred is evidence of his foolishness, because he went into this situation armed. He didn't help suppress a riot. He didn't help, the riot went on around him. But instead, he found himself at the center of a storm. And ironically enough, he brings the weapon, and his first shooting, he really shoots the person to protect his weapon because this fear that he expressed was that this person was going to seize the weapon from him and shoot him with it. And so he walked straight into serious unrest, which is very difficult, even under the best of circumstances, for law enforcement to suppress. Civil unrest is a lot of people who are sort of armchair quarterbacking riot responses forget that maintaining social peace and an atmosphere of civil unrest is a difficult law enforcement task.
No doubt.
It is not helped along by 17-year-olds with rifles. And so he walks into that circumstance, and it was deeply dangerous. And now 2 people are dead. One is seriously wounded, going to have wounds, suffer from the effects of his wounds for the rest of his life. Kyle's life is irrevocably changed.
Forever. Right.
And yes, the evidence, I think, is very strong that all of that happened in self-defense under the meaning of the self-defense statutes, but was still deeply irresponsible with terrible consequences.
Mm-hmm. So what do we do about that gap, David? I mean, I think hopefully what this is teaching us is that the law isn't everything.
No.
The law doesn't determine actually when we're morally culpable.
Right.
And so I think that's why, first of all, I think largely people are ignorant of how the law works. But I think there's also this visceral feeling that, no, somebody needs to pay. He shouldn't have been there. And they're looking at the law to be the one that determines that says that out loud.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. I mean, one of the things you have to understand about our criminal justice system is it is biased. It is biased in favor of the defense. So you have to bear a burden as a prosecutor beyond a reasonable doubt that before you're going to be able to deprive someone of their life or liberty. And so in many ways, even if you're just looking at the justice of a situation, the criminal justice system is designed from the ground up to be biased against the prosecution. It's going to be hard to put it's going to be harder to put someone in prison. So right there, you're going to have circumstances where, and we have as a society have made a judgment that the larger interests of justice are served by these burdens of proof. But right there, you're going to have some people who can sometimes get away with things. At the same time, also, our laws are not a perfect mirror of morality. There are laws that do express a moral norm. I mean, the laws against murder, that's an expression of a very strong moral norm. But our laws are not a perfect mirror of our morality. Mm-hmm. And so the law often not only permits, it often protects immoral conduct. An example taking out of the criminal justice system, the law protects bad speech right alongside the protection of good speech. So, one of the things that we say is that the law is an imperfect judge of what is good and bad speech. Agents of the state are imperfect judges of what's good and bad speech and thoughts worthy of being expressed versus being suppressed. And so we permit a marketplace of ideas, and that's been to our great benefit.
Yes.
And so we really do a disservice to the law when we say it has to mirror our morality. Sometimes it does, and sometimes expresses strong moral norms and protects strong moral norms, and sometimes it does not for good reasons.
All right, let me just ask you then about the Second Amendment. I know you've been a supporter of the 2nd Amendment. I believe you still are. But talk about the difference between, supporting a right to carry and this type of attitude that Kyle Rittenhouse had when he walked into that crowd.
Yeah. So the Second Amendment supports a right to keep arms, which has been interpreted to have weapons, say, in your home for self-defense, and to bear. Bear meaning carry. Now, this is going to be something that the Supreme Court is going to be deciding this term, but it's highly likely that the Supreme Court is going to say that the right to bear arms means you have an ability to carry weapons outside the home for self-defense. But there's a lot of room for regulation in how that's done. And in early American history, there's a lot of record of laws that were saying you can't carry a weapon, quote unquote, offensively or for the fear or terror of the public. And so one of the, I think, a fair regulation is a regulation that says you can't carry a gun in public for an intimidating purpose, a purpose designed to frighten or menace your fellow citizens. And that's what, quite frankly, a lot of this open carry with AR-15s, assault weapons style firearms is designed to do. And I think that's a highly questionable, whether certainly as a matter of ethics, and highly questionable as a matter of law, whether that should be permitted. And that's different from concealed carry, where I'm carrying a weapon, but because it's concealed, I'm not intimidating to anyone. I'm not scaring anyone. I'm not menacing anyone. And that's a pure self-defense mechanism. Now, it's interesting. That's flipped from the colonial era. In the colonial era, if you had a concealed weapon, it was often presumed you were up to no good.
That was intimidating. Huh.
Yeah. And if you if you carried openly, it was you were less, it was a less intimidating.
You were showing your
carry.
cards, right, from the beginning.
Exactly.
Everybody knew. So David, I've been thinking about this, and I'm sure you as a father as well. I mean, everybody, when you think about a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old, when you were that age, when we were that age, your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations, they lay before you. And so now there's Kyle Rittenhouse as an 18-year-old, has avoided 2 murder charges, rightfully so. But what will his future look like? I mean, he will always be that guy no matter where he goes. I mean, I can't imagine what you build upon, how you have a life and try to avoid not being that guy.
Well, you raise a really good question. I mean, because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to make him a celebrity from that event. I know that there was like a Tucker Carlson camera crew with him during the trial. He's going to be on Tucker Carlson. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to elevate him as a celebrity and a hero because of those events last year in Kenosha. I think that's very unwise. I think that's very unwise for a million different reasons. I think it's unwise for him to define himself by really what was an act of self-defense in the middle of his own recklessness and foolishness. And the other thing is, by consenting to be elevated as a hero, you're inspiring perhaps other people to imitate his example.
Sure. Who needs that?
And I would say the last thing that we need right now is people grabbing a gun and heading to something that they think signifies a failure of law enforcement or heading towards trouble in some sort of way. Because let's not forget, there's also a trial going on right now. Closing arguments just started in the trial of the killers of Ahmaud Arbery. And that was a situation where citizens grabbed guns, got in their truck, and went after a guy that for no good reason thought was up to no good. And at the end of the day, he's gunned down in the street in cold blood. Yep. And the last thing we need to be encouraging is vigilantism in this country, especially with tensions as high as they are. And if Rittenhouse allows himself to be sort of carried on this wave of far-right celebrity, it's going to be glorifying vigilantism. It's going to be glorifying people taking the law into their own hands, grabbing a rifle, and heading out into the streets. And I think that's a very, very deeply irresponsible and dangerous development.
Yeah, I agree with you. Who wants that? Who needs that? All right, David, I need to lighten the mood for a minute. College football is drawing to a close. I'm wearing my University of Pittsburgh shirt because we have a good quarterback for the first time, I think, in my whole lifetime. Pitt won the ACC Coastal, in case you're keeping track. David.
I don't keep track of the ACC.
It's hard to believe. That hurts me a little.
Division II football is not
Oh,
my
get out of here. That is, see, that's rude how you say it. Okay, so how do you feel? What's it going to come down to in college football this year?
You know, it's interesting. Normally, I'm somebody who piles on the Big Ten.
Yes.
But Ohio State is looking very good. Ohio State's looking very good. Alabama has been kind of faltering.
Yes. Which is such a pleasure to see, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, hate to see it, he says sarcastically. Georgia has been a juggernaut. They have been a juggernaut, but it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a Georgia-Alabama SEC title. And here's the thing. If Alabama wins,
Then what?
I bet you have Georgia and Alabama in the playoff.
Sure.
So what I'm very interested in is what happens with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I know,
I'm-
but their schedule, they're kind of a victim of their own
It's a
schedule. there.
wild card, yeah.
I know, but at some point you got to let one of these non-P5 schools in. So I say
know. I'd
let
love
Cincinnati, let Cincinnati in. Let them play football with the biggest of the big boys on the block. See how it goes. And hey, if they do well, it could really kind of upend the way we think about college football rankings. If they get,
Wouldn't that be good?
It'd be very good.
I'd
yeah.
love to see
it'd
that.
be fun.
be
I'd love
It'd
to
be
see
fun.
Yes. David,
Yeah.
always a pleasure.
Thanks,
so much for
David.
being
Good
with
to
us.
see you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
David French from The Dispatch. We highly recommend it. We
You should read it
subscribe.
every day.
Yep, The Dispatch. You can find it easily online. Take a quick break and come back. Our relationship with leaves.
Leaves.
That's next.
I hate raking. I just hate it.
Hey, Gare. So that clock, should we follow that clock? Well, it's leaf pickup season in our neighborhood. We have a vacuum. The guys drive around the streets and suck those things up. Do you have that in your township?
What I would do for that?
You don't have that?
No, we have to bag everything.
Oh, you have to bag it.
We probably, and I mean this conservatively, I bet in our yard we generate 60 bags.
Whoa. Are you using plastic bags or are you using those biodegradable?
Biodegradable ones.
Okay.
I mean, it's it's just the perpetual state of fall for
Yeah,
us.
right. Okay. So all we do is we just rake them down the hill and then put them out on the
that's
curb.
so great.
And then the guys come by, often use like little signs. This week they're going to come by, so be ready, you know. And then they always say, this is the last leaf pickup of the year. We know that's coming as well. So anyway, there's an article in today's Wall Street Journal about Mount Lebanon, of all places, and their 500,000 cubic feet of leaves, which is enough to fill more than 200 40-foot shipping containers of leaves.
Wait, say that again?
Mount Lebanon residents, it's estimated that Mount Lebanon has 500,000 cubic feet of leaves, which is enough to fill more than 200 40-foot shipping containers of leaves.
Holy cow.
That's a lot of leaves. What's interesting is, you know, that they've been doing this, like in Mount Lebanon, like in my neighborhood. This is just part of the sort of the history of the neighborhood. And people who move to these neighborhoods, like there's in this article, America's love-hate relationship with fall leaves, pretty, but who's going to pick them up? In 2003, in this Wall Street Journal article, there's a woman, her name is Kelly Frosch. She moved to Mount Lebanon from California. She had never heard of municipal leaf vacuums. And someone said, hey, it's time to rake your leaves. And she was like, what's this all about? Anyway, she became part of the town's governing commission. She raised concerns about spending the money and the time and all that. And they were like, oh, no. That's Mount Lebanon. We are not going to change that. Right. So it's a really great article in the Wall Street Journal about our sort of, I don't know, is it just Western Pennsylvania?
No, I don't know. No, it's definitely not just Western Pennsylvania. I was out in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Same thing.
Yeah, we were driving through a neighborhood where my husband spent his earliest years.
Yeah.
Like this was 4th grade and under. And it looks like the quintessential Americana.
Right.
It has old trees. It's still fall out there. Here, it's much colder here and grayer there. Out in the east, it's very vibrant still. Yep. And I thought to myself, this is what we think of when we think of
fall America.
Quintessential. And then I thought, who rakes these?
Right. Remember the old days? I remember when I was growing up, people used to burn their leaves. Now, I still think in some places in the country, people burn their leaves.
Yeah, well, nobody's burning them in the city of Pittsburgh, I'll tell you that.
I'm grateful for those guys in my neighborhood with a giant leaf-sucking thing.
I want them to come to my neighborhood.
You still got to rake.
Coming up next, we'll remember C.S. Lewis, who died on this day, 1963, surprised by friendship. What were his actual friendships like? We'll talk about it next.
This date in 1963 was the death of C.S. Lewis. It's hard to imagine C.S. Lewis ever being upstage, but he was, of course, because this is also the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And that made, of course, international headlines. Here to talk to us about friendship of C.S. Lewis on this date is Gina D'Alfonso. Gina's an author. She's been with us multiple times over the years. Her latest book is called Dorothy and Jack, The Transforming Friendship of Dorothy L. Sayers and C.S. Lewis. Gina, welcome back to the show. How you been?
Thanks so much. It's great to be back.
Always good to have you here, Gina. So C.S. Lewis, I'm a fan. I've been a fan since I was a little kid, when I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think I was maybe in third grade or something like that. And so I've had this fascination with the man, but he's complex. He's, for people who haven't read him, perhaps they haven't wrestled with a lot of his ideas aren't things that I can go along with. It doesn't mean I don't have great affection for him and don't think he was amazing. So before we start talking about things in particular, what are your thoughts of the man?
Well, I'm a fan as well. I came to Lewis a bit later than you did. I believe I was in high school and started out, I think, with Screw Tape or Mere Christianity or one of those, and came to Narnia later. So I sort of did things backwards. But like so many readers of Lewis, I've read so many of his books and essays and just come to appreciate him as a person as well as a writer. And as you said, that doesn't mean I think he was right about everything, but it does mean I think he was, there was really something special about him. I think he was, his faith had a quality to it where it gave him humility. It gave him the desire to obey God, to serve God faithfully. And that was something that stayed with him all his life. So many of us fall away in one direction or the other, or go through periods of rebellion. And he seems to have got all of that out of his system in his younger days, because once he came to Christianity, he was committed. And that just shines through, I think, in his life and in his work.
Fabulous. So, Gina, you're here to talk about C.S. Lewis and him being a friend. What kind of a friend was C.S. Lewis?
Well, by all accounts, he was an excellent friend. The book I wrote focused on just one of his friendships with Dorothy L. Sayers, although other friendships come into it, of course, at various points, but that's the main focus of the book. And they had such a wonderful friendship. Their correspondence was just a delight to read. They were so funny, and they learned so much from each other, and they supported each other so much. And apparently those were qualities that he brought to his friendships in general. He was just a really good friend.
Okay, so that's the way he was in actuality, which is how I would wish he would be.
Yes.
But you're talking about his writing, and a couple instances it's not quite the same.
Right. I recently wrote an article for Fathom magazine where I talked about Lewis and friendship, and I hit on an interesting sort of discrepancy for him. In his book, The Four Loves, he has some really great things to say about friendship, but he also kind of shies away from the topic of male-female friendship. He seems to feel a little uncomfortable with it. He talks about how rare it can be and how difficult it is to get right. But in reality, in life, we know that he was great friends with Sayers. He was great friends with other women, and it seemed so strange to me that there was this discrepancy. So I wrote this article to sort of explore it and to look at the notion that even if you have certain blind spots about friendship and how it works sometimes, you can still be a good friend.
Sure.
Isn't that funny? I mean, the idea of friendships between men and women, that's one of those things that goes back, I'm sure, forever and ever. And it's still talked about today, of course, right? I mean, it's become like a sticking point for culture in some way.
Right. That's right. There was a book that came out a couple years ago by Amy Bird. I think it was called Why Can't We Be Friends, that gets into this subject quite a lot and talks about how the church these days really struggles with the idea of cross-gender friendships and how they're so often viewed as the source of temptation. Now, of course, anything's possible, and any relationship can become the source of temptation, and I think we're wise not to forget that. But we tend to go to extremes with it. And I think that hurts us ultimately, because male-female friendships, as Lewis and Sayers proved, can be so nurturing and so valuable and can help deepen our faith instead of lead us away from it.
Yeah, Gina, and thinking about that, John and I have worked together for a long time. And so, we've talked about this issue a lot. And I think that in most cases, when you think about men and women who are working together, and men, if the man chooses not to pursue a professional relationship or to pursue a friendship with a woman, it oftentimes hurts the woman because it doesn't allow her into like the echelon of either management or, intellectual rigor or academia or
you're talking about
whatever
the Billy
it is.
Graham rule in
Yeah,
some way.
kind of like the Billy Graham rule, right?
Yeah.
But also, it really does hurt men because men end up being in an echo chamber of just hearing opinions and points of view, perspectives that are just given by other men. So it really, even though we talk about women being more damaged by it, I think it's really men and women who are equally damaged
Without a
by
doubt,
it.
yeah, because I think men are freaked out by it, especially in this, the area that we live in right now. I mean, the pornification of this world, I think that, that's really sort of damaged men and women's relationships, which is crazy. And so we're at a disadvantage. And I think a lot of guys, for whatever reason, are leery or just don't have the skill set or the tools to be a friend with a woman.
Right. Yes, that's right. And in the book, I talk a little bit about how Sayers literally needed male friendships in her life, or her career never would have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Open those doors.
I mean, at the most basic level, she needed to network, as we call it now.
Yeah.
And I don't think her friendships with most men were merely transactional like that, but she did need them, and she was helped by them. And Lewis too. He grew up and he lived for most of his life in a very male-dominated world, because that was just the way things were, and it wasn't really questioned that much. And as you say, he was in danger of being in the echo chamber. Now, it did help that as time went on, he met more and more intellectual women, academic women, fellow literary women, as Sayers was, and he did have the sense to listen to them, to listen to their point of view, to learn from them, and it helped him as a person. It helped his writing. It was just healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy.
Gina D'Alfonso's with us. The book we're talking about, Dorothy and Jack, The Transforming Friendship of Dorothy L. Sayers and C.S. Lewis. Gina, our time's almost up. I just have to ask you a quick question. If someone's listening to this program, they're thinking about C.S. Lewis, and they're like, I've never read anything by him. What should I read? What would you say? What are your favorites?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, gosh. The reason I hesitate a little is because he wrote in so many genres. I would almost be tempted to ask, okay, what's your favorite genre, and then go from there.
Oh, that's good.
That's wise.
But I'm very, if I had to pick just one, I would say maybe start with The Weight of Glory.
Oh,
because
yeah, okay.
It's essays, short
Yeah.
essays, so you can take it in bite-sized pieces. And I think that some of those essays are among the most moving things that he wrote, and just really full of spiritual wisdom and insight. And so if I had to pick just one, I tend to say that one.
Let's go. We'll go with Weight of Glory. That's
Very
Gina
nice.
D'Alfonso. Gina, sorry we got to leave so quickly, but that's radio. Gina, thanks so much for being with us. More information about Gina, find her on Twitter. She's a real fun follow.
She
Gina
sure is.
D'Alfonso. All right, so today's Cranberry Relish Day.
Mm-hmm.
You for obvious reasons, as we're anticipating Thanksgiving. And you mentioned last week that you like that kind of cranberry. You're talking the grated chopped thing. See, I'm not as wild about that.
Really?
I mean, it's not like
I love it.
don't like it, but I'd rather have the cranberry sauce, the cooked sauce.
That's fine too.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, but the grated, the texture of it all.
It's nice.
It is. It's
It kind of
like,
wakes you up a little bit.
It's pungent. Yes.
Would you celebrate this Cranberry Relish Day, John?
I would
Okay.
if I had some.
But you don't have any, so you
It's
won't?
not like you can't go like somewhere and buy some, can you?
No, but you can make it.
Right. That's
It's
the problem.
grating cranberries
I mean, it's
and
got to be
oranges.
pretty easy to make.
Of course.
I'm just saying.
Spoken by the president who never makes a thing.
Yep.
So news comes that we should expect to pay more for our Christmas trees this year.
Dare I say the words?
COVID ruins everything.
Supply chain issues.
Okay.
Okay, so apparently last year during COVID, people who were longing for an outdoor experience went out and bought a live Christmas tree. People who had like artificial trees. So because of that,
because they've been inside all the time. Give me
Right.
something that's alive. That's
they
not
wanted
me.
to walk the hills and cut their own
Sure.
tree down, and you get that. We do that every year. Now you and I have this disagreement. We cut down a tree every year. You go to the attic.
I just go right up to the attic and I say hello to it again.
Okay.
I say greetings to you, my friend from last year.
Now, so artificial trees, supply chain issues. The live trees, because so many were bought last year, there are less available. So the people who grow the trees, the Christmas tree farms, are charging more.
Right.
So as a result, whether it's an artificial tree or a live tree, you're going to pay more money for your tree.
Except
If
if
you
you've
have a
already
tree.
purchased an artificial tree, you won't pay anything.
Right.
Which is the beauty of it, really.
You've had your tree since when?
A long time.
20 years?
It doesn't look good. I'll be
see?
honest with you. It is not.
Doesn't it put a damper on the holidays?
It's sagging a bit. There are large spaces.
that's
The
not
cats have attacked it for years now. It's hurting.
Yeah.
I admit it. It's hurting.
So this is not the year to buy a new one. Or how about just go and buy it like a live tree?
I'm not going to have a tree this year.
What? You're not going to have no Christmas tree at the Evans household? Nothing?
No.
No tree? Large or small? Nothing.
Maybe a bough.
You've got all this room. Now would be the year to go out and buy yourself like a big honking tree and
Why
go,
would I do that?
Boom. Because it smells great. It'll make you super happy. It looks
There's
beautiful.
No. It's not going to happen.
I'm surprised by that.
Are you disappointed in me?
I'm not disappointed, just surprised.
Oh, you're pitying me now.
I do feel a little bad for you. Because seriously, I look
doing
forward to
it.
going out and cutting down the tree. We've already set a date when we're going to
Okay.
do this. Hopefully, there'll be some
mean
out
me
there
and you?
for us. Not you.
Okay.
My family and I. And we look forward to this.
All right.
The smell of a live tree.
I want you to be happy,
Me too. Thank you.
but it's not. I can't do it this year, John.
All
There's
right.
too much going on in my house, or
There's
there's
nothing
nothing
going on in your
There's no
house.
furniture in my house. Why
Nothing.
would I put a tree up so we can all sit there on pillows in
Should
front
make
of it
you
and say,
feel
"Wow, what a
happy."
nice tree"?
Because it's beautiful.
Forget it.
All right. So are you going to put lights up this year?
No.
Nothing. Holy smokes. The Grinch has come to the Emmons household for
Someone
Christmas.
has to carry the mantle, and this year it's me.
All right. We'll take a quick break. When we do come back, we look forward to our 5 o'clock hour.
Tish Harrison Morrison. No, Tish Harrison Warren. 5 ways to exercise, John, your thankfulness.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for coming along. It's cold out there right now, and there's a little snow in the surrounding area.
Listen, I'm telling you, we drove through the Turnpike West
Yeah.
to get back home yesterday, and up in the mountains, it was
Snow?
like 28 degrees. It was shockingly cold, and it made me think, all right, here we are.
Here, yeah, there's no
All
denying
right,
it.
so
We're
I
here.
pulled out the big coat, John. I have
Did
to
you,
admit,
though?
yeah, pulled it out. That not the median,
The big one.
the big one. It's here. It has the fur on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I got the whole thing.
I'm taking my big one to the dry cleaners. I am.
You and your dry cleaning.
I'm going to the dry
What
cleaners.
is the deal? Just wash
No,
your
you can't.
coat in the
no,
machine.
no. This is a coat that I specifically thought, I'll wash it. It's a down coat.
My coat's a down coat.
It's Uncle Bill's.
Oh,
So, came to me from a relative.
sure. Right, of course.
So I got to take care of it.
Yeah.
It says, don't wash it. It says, take it to the dry cleaners.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I've just never met a person who's as committed to dry cleaning as you are.
I got no problem with it. What's the problem with the dry cleaners?
Like, John seems like he's the everyman, but when you get right down to the details,
Get out.
there's
No,
a
no,
little
no.
bit of like a feet lifestyle.
There's
going on.
nothing to feed
I
about
think-
it. I don't
there
think
is.
there's no feetness about it. I mean, like the sweater thing. Like, I had some sweaters. They sat like, last year because of COVID, I didn't even wear them at all.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll just take to the dry cleaners. Then I pulled them out. I read, I was like, oh, hand wash. So, well, I hand wash them. It's me. I'm hand washing.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, so
dry, but
it's a
you're-
little easier
it's
to
not
go
like-
to the dry cleaner just to go give them to some guy here, and he gives me a little tag, and I come back in a few days. And otherwise, there I am with the wool light, and I have to spin them, then I got to put them out on a little drying rack. I mean, it seems a bit much.
That's what the people do, John.
It's a bit much, isn't it?
The ruling elite do something different.
I don't think so. The dry cleaner guy is
Listen,
like
John,
for guys.
the day you
He's for
admitted
guys.
the day you admitted on the air that you dry clean your turtlenecks
Yeah.
was the day it all went south for you.
Listen, dry cleaners, I believe that they do provide a very,
They do.
very, very.
Just not for turtlenecks.
Okay, so listen, if you're a dry cleaner out there, I would invite you to email Kath and set her straight. Okay?
I mean, who's
And if you want to advertise, you can advertise as well. And I'll be happy to do it for you.
Now, wait a minute.
Just say it.
This is all of
Okay.
a sudden I'm the bad guy.
Hi, this
here.
is John Hall for Runners Cleaners. Whenever I take my turtlenecks to Runners, that's what it's going to be next. That's what it's going to be.
Oh, my
Okay,
God.
let me switch gears here
All
on
right,
you.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
I saw this in the paper today. Polls. How about the people who do polling for a living? As though like the
would hate
polling
that.
is the gospel.
I would hate that. I mean, I'm glad people do it very much, but I would just hate that.
Okay, here's a new poll for you. More Americans say that they are not planning to have a child. New poll says. That's sad news, isn't it?
Yes.
It is sad news. More U.S. adults who do not already have kids are saying that they are unlikely to ever have them, a new Pew Research survey finds. Experts are concerned that the U.S. birth rate, which has declined for the sixth straight year, may not fuel enough population growth on its own to keep the future economy afloat. Women between the ages of 18 to 49 and men, this is weird. Women between the ages of 18 and 40 to 49 and men between the ages of 18 and 59 said they are not parents, who were not parents, were asked the question, quote, thinking about the future, how likely is it that you will have children someday? You're asking a 59-year-old guy if he's going to have kids and a 49-year-old woman.
Right. Not very. It
What
should be
is
the
that?
answer.
When asked for a reason, but let me see. I'm reading from the Washington Post. When asked for a reason, 56% of childless adults said it is not at all or too likely that they will ever have children. It's because they just don't want them. Mm-hmm. They don't want kids.
Right. Okay, well,
That's a conversation stopper, isn't it?
this is what I think of when I hear somebody. And listen, there are a ton of people listening to this who would love to have kids
Heck
and
yeah.
have never been able to.
100%.
So I don't want anything I say to add additional pain
No.
to what you've experienced, because that's extremely real. But when I hear people say, I don't want a child, what they don't realize is that it's their child. They're thinking in the abstract.
My
Like,
kid.
I don't want a random kid. Like, I don't want a child. You don't realize until you have a child that it's your child.
It's a gift.
Yeah. Elizabeth Bruning wrote a piece in the New York Times on Mother's Day last year during COVID that really stayed with me. And that's one of the points she made, is that in the abstract, kids are nothing but expensive.
They are.
A time suck.
They are.
They prevent you from sleeping.
They do.
They prevent you from realizing your career ambitions.
Yep.
And they take up a lot of room.
They do all those things.
Okay.
Check, 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 check.
Okay. But if you put it in the personal context and realize that it's your child, that's a whole different thing. It's no longer in the abstract.
No.
And those things that I just read off, as true as they are, aren't the subtraction that equals the addition of what your child would be for you.
But I get it. I understand why people would say that. Listen, being a father, I believe, is the most difficult task I've ever undertaken, without a doubt. It is a hard chore to be a parent. So if you're childless and you think, well, maybe I'm on the fence about this, I could understand why people would say, not for me. I'm just not going to do it.
I would encourage them greatly to not do that. Only because you have no concept of how enriched your life will be with children. As expensive and difficult and all of that. I mean, there's no comparison. It's not even a
it's true.
remote comparison.
I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my mom, and she had 7.
Right.
I mean, that poor woman. I mean, you can imagine. Although I have 2 kids, you have 2 kids, Gary, you got 2 kids. I wish I had more kids.
See?
I do. I really
So
do.
do I.
Like my kids are pretty much, they're growing up. They're like, there they are. They're launching. And I go, I wish I could do that again. Oh, my dad, here's my dad. My dad was dying. Him and my mom, they had 7 kids.
And he was how old?
My dad was dying at 64. And my mom's told me this story after the fact. She said, your father's dying of cancer. And he says to me one day, Grace, let's have another baby. My mom said, Dawn, what are you talking about? You're 64, I'm 60, whatever she was, 2 or whatever. We can't have kids. He said, Grace, that's the one thing we did really well.
Which is why we did it 7 times.
Right. I mean, you get that. There's a lot of joy there. There's a lot of struggle as well.
Yep, there is.
It's not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination.
It isn't, but would you ever go back?
No, never, never, never. I wish I'd have done it sooner.
And how many people do you know how many people have you known in your life who have children? How many of them would say, I would go back and not have these kids?
Probably not. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the proof. That's all the proof you need.
Yeah. As difficult as it is, the
Yes.
rewards are far, 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 far greater. You just have to throw it in there. And so, yeah, what you said early on, Kath, about, there are many people who can't have kids and wish that they could
Sure.
have that. And that's a heartbreak. You feel that as well.
And a lot of people realize, this is the case with just a good number of friends, really wonderful people who I know very well now, who now that they're 50, they wish they would have had kids.
Probably so. Right.
They did it for good reasons. They were, they had power careers and they made a lot of money and they had a lot of time that I didn't have and a lot of people didn't have. But now you reach a point where you wished you could go back.
I'm into that. Anyway, we'll take a quick break. Tish Harrison Warren will join us in a few minutes. We're going to talk about 5 ways to exercise your thankfulness muscles. That's next on the ride home. This is Thanksgiving week. And I think for a lot of people, who are not regularly people who think about gratitude, about thanks, it's always a great sort of pit stop to pause and reflect. Now, of course, if you're a believer, I'm sure that there are many times throughout the day or through the week that you do give thanks. But it's a weird thing to do it. How do I give thanks intentionally? Well, Tish Harrison Warren is with us. Tish is a priest in the Anglican Church in North America, the author of Liturgy of the Ordinary, Sacred Practices in Everyday Life, which was named Christianity Today's 2018 Book of the Year. Her latest is called Prayer for the Night for Those Who Work or Watch or Weep. And Tish, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. It's good to talk to you guys again.
Yeah, Tish, we miss you here in Pittsburgh. Hope you're well.
I know. I miss you guys, too. You're in my old stomping ground.
We are.
I do miss Pittsburgh. Hello, Pittsburgh. I miss you in general, but especially Clinton, I miss you.
Well, Tish, it's a typical Pittsburgh day. It's cold and cloudy.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's a far cry from where you are in Texas.
It's like 70 degrees and
Stop
sunny,
it.
right?
Stop it
so
right now,
lovely.
Tish. I just
Yeah.
It
can't.
feels kind of fallish, like there's a light breeze, and but it's sunny for sure.
Tish, you've done a terrific job writing in the
Congratulations.
New York Times. Congratulations on that wonderful opening that's been extended to you.
Yeah, it was surprising.
Well,
It's surprising in a lot of ways, isn't it?
yeah, and you're living into it. We love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. You wrote in the in your Thanksgiving article about exercising thankfulness something that struck a nerve, because you said that in your house growing up, things were like pretty austere. Like it wasn't like time to share your deepest feelings with each other on
You were more
Thanksgiving.
Weisenheimers.
Yeah, things were not austere. That would not be the right. There was lots of joking
Okay.
and sarcasm, and but we were more in the register of kind of like if you've ever seen like National Lampoon's Vacation, sort of like
Oh gosh,
wacky,
yeah. Okay.
wacky. And my father was like he was really funny, and he was kind of a comedian. But we just weren't. It wasn't like we didn't like do sincere and earnest kind of sharing.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about our feelings.
Okay, let me break in and say so my family, it was Eastern European for the most part, and so it was just loud. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of eating, that sort of thing. And one year,
Exactly.
I decided I wanted to make a Thanksgiving box and have people write down what they were thankful for, Tish, because I thought I would introduce some of this meaning to it.
Yeah.
And as I was reading people's responses, and the idea was that we'd guess who said it, right? There was like beer, wine.
I'm grateful for
Like
that.
exactly, like mixed drinks. Like that's what people were. I mean, so it kind of crashed and burned. But your parents decided to do something kind of similar. Did it work?
Yeah, it sounds like our families are very similar. Yeah. And then suddenly, the piece starts with like suddenly out of nowhere, my parents said, we're going to share what we're thankful for. And it just sort of shocked everyone because it's not the kind of thing we do. But we did. And there were years where it was very silly. And there were years, like after my father had his heart surgery and almost died, everyone was crying. I mean, it was really moving. Yeah.
Well, in the piece that you write, 5 Ways to Exercise Your Thankfulness Muscles, you say this, that most of the best things in life can only be received and held with open hands.
Yeah.
Tish, I love that so much. I mean, that really is the essence of gratitude, of thankfulness. And so you tell the story about you and your daughter walking around the neighborhood, and, she sees the beauty of life, the open hand of life, and the two of you sort of have a game looking at things and talking about things that you're grateful for.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could take credit for this because, I have books on practices and that sort of thing, but this is all my daughter, and she's 11 now. When she was like 5 or 6, she invented this game called the Beautiful Game, where we just walked around and looked for beautiful things in our neighborhood, and it was so funny. I mean, I remember one time her pointing out the rust on a mailbox, and me thinking, I never thought of that as beautiful, but that is so, when you stop and look at the colors, it's so beautiful. And since the piece came out, I was surprised that so many people have commented about the Beautiful Game specifically, and so I it showed me how much beauty there is all around me that I constantly overlook, and that you have to sort of be intentional about seeing. And in the same way, I said, go on a grateful walk to notice every single thing in the walk that you can be grateful for, from, the local school to a coffee shop you like, to even the fact that you're walking to something beautiful that you see, or a neighbor that's kind. And I didn't get to put it in the piece, but it's crazy when you start looking into the literature on gratitude. It's almost this kind of magic virtue that everyone agrees that it's good, but then it also has all these. They've done studies where it lowers a consistent practice of gratitude, ups your serotonin levels. It can work as a kind of antidote, or like a low dose antidepressant. It lowers your blood pressure. I mean, there's all this kind of like psychological research that consistent gratitude has this sort of like mass response. And then you see it, everyone from John Chrysostom in the 2nd century to Brene Brown both talk about how important gratitude is for a life well lived. It's this kind of crazy, bright, like silver thread that you see through the literature. It's really interesting.
That's so cool.
Tish Harrison Warren is with us. She's a priest in the Anglican Church in North America. She's the author of her latest book, which is really, it's just so good, Prayer in the Night for those who work or watch or weep. We're talking about, though, her article in the New York Times called 5 Ways to Exercise Your Thankfulness Muscles. One of the things that we talked about on last week's show, it's come up a couple times because I think about it a lot, Tish, is that one of the things that's frustrating, and I know that you lost your dad over the last couple of years. I lost both of my parents, and one of the things that I consistently remember when they were alive is I remember thinking, I have to appreciate this. I have to really, be grateful for it. I have to really remember it. But the problem is that you can't capture it like you want to.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't make it stay. It's like you don't have the capacity to appreciate it as much as you should, and it's so fleeting, and then it's gone, and then you think, I should have appreciated it more, but then you weren't able to at the time. And so I think about that when it comes to Thanksgiving, and I think maybe just the attitude of gratefulness, that openness that you're talking about, is the way that we make sense of that. We don't understand, we can't really hold on to it, and yet if we kind of open our hands, maybe that allows us to get at something that we wouldn't be able to get at otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we hold both gratitude and loss. And we especially feel that around the holidays. I think we hold both at all times. But I also think, I couldn't get too much into it because these are short newsletters in the New York Times, but I have a whole chapter on joy and a lot of what I say about joy in my latest book, Prayer in the Night, which everyone should order, is related to gratitude. And one of the things I found writing this chapter, and this gets into the newsletter, but in a much briefer way, is as I was looking at joy, just we have a really hard time thinking about joy. And I asked famous pastors and theologians and New Testament scholars, and I just felt like, you guys are terrible at talking about joy. But one of the things that I found was that we have a hard time because we want to say joy is something greater than just good stuff in life, right? We want to say it's bigger, but then we end up spending all our time saying, well, joy is not the turkey and not the ice cream and not the friends and family. It's ultimately Jesus. And when everything has fallen away, we still have that, which is true, but it just makes joy sound like this horrible thing that you never want to happen to you, that everything in your life is taken away, and you have this thing. And so what I came to is that is this concept. It's a theological idea called sacramental ontology, which is a big word that basically means when we touch on good and beautiful things, that they are themselves good and beautiful, but that they also witness to something. Not only witness, but are really kind of a piece of something much larger and longer and eternal. And And so it's like a sacrament. It isn't a sacrament, but it's like that, and that it's a visible sign of a invisible reality. And so I think in the same way, when we touch on these good things that we are grateful for, relationships with people in our lives are the biggest, but also, you know, the mashed potatoes I'm going to be having on Thursday, and, you know, the 70-degree weather that we have, or the beautiful leaves that you guys have up there. Then there's something about that experience of goodness and love and beauty that we are grateful for in and of itself, but it's never enough. And so it also has to sort of point us to this ultimate reality of eternal things and of, you know, the giver of every good gift, the giver himself.
Amen. And with that, you know, what you wrote about keeping that open hand, and what Kath is saying about the fleetingness of the moment, these things that these 5 ways to exercise, you know, about, and I don't want to give them all away, but, you know, I want our listeners to go and find the article itself. But, you know, you talk about concrete things, about keeping lists and writing notes and composing a psalm and making a piece of art. All those things are something that, even though the hands are open and it is fleeting, those are something that you can wrap yourself around, and it does instill that gratitude, that joy in your life, which maybe perhaps in some ways prolongs the joy and the gratitude in your life.
Yeah, and helps you notice and helps you remember. I think that's a great part about poetry, or writing a letter to someone, or even taking photos with friends, and that it helps you remember those things, and it helps you celebrate them. Yeah, I do think that in everything I've read in both in psychological literature, but also just spiritual literature, plays out that gratitude and joy is a practice that you can kind of get used to feeling. You can get used to looking at what you don't have and dwelling on that, or you can sort of train yourself to look at what you do have and dwell on that. And so you do kind of train yourself to be more grateful or not be. In other words, I think that we tend to think about this as a feeling, like you either feel grateful or not. It's just you're sort of born with it. But I talked about it in the piece, like exercising a muscle. I do think that there's ways we can practice it that teach us to notice goodness. And that doesn't mean we're happy all the time at all. In fact, I talk in the piece about finding gratitude in the middle of pain. But it means that even in the depths of pain, there's still little hints of beauty, and there's still little hints of kindness in the midst of that. Yeah. And so I do think we can sort of train ourselves to see that. And just as we can train ourselves to be bitter and to be ungrateful as well.
Yeah, I'm into that,
right.
Yeah.
Tish Harrison Warren is with us. Tish, I want to ask you, COVID time kind of messed up my head, and so I'm not sure what happened when, but is this your first Thanksgiving back in Texas, or were you there last Thanksgiving?
No, this is first. This is the first one.
And
we were in Pittsburgh last Thanksgiving.
what's it going to be like?
It's going to be weird because I'm hosting it for the first time.
Are you?
At my house. I've never hosted it before, but I am living in my mother's old house, and that's where we sort of always had Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So I am the least domestic person I know. It's ridiculous that I'm hosting, but I'm in the house, so we're doing it. And my mom, who has Alzheimer's, is coming, but she is no longer able to live alone because she's cognitively not safe to live alone. So it's going to be my family gathered together. But I'm used in the past when my parents were both alive and hosted, we would have 30, 40 people, huge. We're having a very small gathering of just my brother and sister and our families. But so it'll be kind of the next generation of Thanksgivings for us. But we will continue the circle of thanks.
Great.
I'm into that.
I love that.
I'm probably the only anyone that wants to, but we're losing that over my dead body.
See,
so we're gonna do it.
that's the thing that the host can impose on all the unwilling peasants,
The
right?
circle of
This
thanks
is the way it
continues
is.
We
on.
had to clean our toilet, so you get to do
Exactly.
this.
So
as well.
you're going to play my game.
Yeah, and enjoy your cranberry sauce.
Listen, for all of you people who are hearing this broadcast, think about buying Prayer in the Night for those who work or watch or weep as a Christmas gift. I'm telling you, it is so terrific. Tish, I've gained so much from it. I'm still not done with it, and
Fabulous.
so I can't imagine what there's still left to get. But thank you
It's
for
great
writing it.
Advent.
Yeah.
So It's very in keeping with the themes of Advent. So.
Outstanding. And we need to post this piece, 5 Ways to Exercise Your Thankfulness
I'll put it
Muscles,
up.
on our Facebook page and our Twitter
I'll
feeds and
Twitter it
whatnot. It's just excellent. And Tish, you helped us set the stage in some ways for this Thanksgiving. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm grateful for you guys. I really am.
Well,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh ways by. Thanks, Tish.
We
All
miss
right,
you.
thanks.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Tish Harrison Warren. As we said, we'll post this piece.
I will.
5 Ways to Exercise Your Thankfulness Muscles.
Does this make sense?
Whoa. Does what make sense?
The Masked Singer.
No.
Okay, we're done.
I don't get that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I see that, and it kind of gives me the willies, and I sort of run away from it. What is the deal with the Masked Singer?
That was so short. Usually you ramble on for a long time.
Because it creeps me out.
It creeps me out
Oh,
too. Of
glad you
course
said
it
that.
doesn't make sense. What are we doing?
I don't know.
How did this? I remember years ago on the show doing like an end of the year, wrap up.
Yeah.
Most popular videos on YouTube internationally for the year.
Yeah.
And it was a Masked Singer thing from South Korea. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting that culture would choose to do that?
And now?
Never thinking that this culture would choose to do that, because to me, growing up as an American, that makes no sense.
No.
Am I exaggerating?
No,
or
I'm telling you. I have no connection to that whatsoever. If I ever see a clip of that or anything for like 1/8 of a second, I go, I'm moving forward. This is too weird. I don't know what that means.
The Masked Singer has received the highest Nielsen ratings for a non-sports program in the adults 18 to 49 key demographic every single TV series season it has aired.
Okay, I guess it's not going to go away then. It's a hit, right? So then what's that say about us?
It doesn't change my mind. Maybe
Right?
we don't make sense,
I
John.
don't know, maybe not. All right, does this make sense? Thank you notes. Oh, no. Now, look, I grew up.
Oh, my God.
I never had to write a thank you note. And then my oldest sister, who's about 10 years older than me, all of a sudden you guys should be writing thank you notes. Everyone should be writing. And then it was like imposed. We have to write thank you. But to be honest, I like it. I got good at it. Someone does a kindness for you, and then you sit down. I've got some nice thank you. I went out and bought, buy some nice thank you notes, and you sit there and just write a few. And it's a simple exchange. I love it. I really do. So to me, as weird as it was initially, I think thank you notes are sort of like some of that inertia, the glue, the thing that holds proper society together. I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But do I do it?
No?
I am the worst. I'm appallingly bad, and you bringing it up in this segment has made me feel worse about myself.
Oh, good. I didn't mean to shame you in
No,
this.
you have.
I know, no.
You just have.
But it just...
I love a thank you note.
Of course you do.
And I love the idea of writing a thank you note. But I don't write the thank you note.
Okay.
Because it slips my mind. And
Well, then you got to start to write a thank you note.
I'm really upset you brought this up.
Gratitude's a good thing, especially in the written format.
The Masked Singer makes no sense.
I talk about this a lot, but this is true. This is what I think made me the curious person that I am, which is to sit around the dinner table nightly. And there were 9 of us. And I was next to the youngest. So I had to work really hard to be heard, to get my point in to the conversation.
He's still working, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I am still working. But it's a skill set. But, there's something about sitting around with your family and hearing stories, right? And dinner time is, I think that's why everybody loves Thanksgiving, because everybody gathers. And for better or worse, you hear family stories.
I like it.
I love it. Mm-hmm. I saw a thing today called The Root of All Things,
Okay.
20 questions. And this, weirdly enough, comes from goodhousekeeping.com. To study how families pass on their history to succeeding generations, Emory University psychologist Robin Fish and Marshall Duke created a 20-question Do You Know scale. Want to fill in the gaps in your own family history? Check out the questions below. Keep in mind that it's not just knowing the information, but the process of sharing that's important. So,
Okay, so what kind of stuff are we talking about?
pretty basic stuff early on.
Okay.
Do you know how your parents met? You know that story?
Interesting. Yes, I know about my parents.
I know
And then,
that.
of course, we'd be asking our kids if they knew
How we met.
how we met.
Yeah. How'd your parents meet? At Heinz?
At Heinz. Yeah, my parents both worked for the same manager.
Okay. My parents met because my dad was an usher at a movie theater and kept a close eye with his little flashlight on my mom.
Well, how about that?
Do it, Don. Do you know where your mother grew up?
Yes, my mom grew up in Morningside. Where did your mom grow up?
Swissvale.
Oh, really? Okay.
Do you know where your father grew up?
My dad grew up in New Ken.
My dad grew up in Regent Square. Do you know where some of your grandparents grew up?
Yes. Yep.
you-
Okay, so do you know that about your grandparents?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So my grandparents grew up in my one grandfather grew up in Denver, but my grandmother grew up in Squirrel Hill.
Oh, that's interesting.
Uh-huh. And then my dad's parents grew up in New Ken.
Do you know where some of your grandparents met? I know that story. From
Okay.
my mother's side, my grandmother, when she was a girl, I think of like 13 or 14, her parents died. And so she was responsible for raising her 6 brothers and sisters. Now, this is like, 18, whatever, and can you imagine? And then my grandfather was a guy who lived in the neighborhood who worked for the railroad. And they, at the age of 14, dated. And then I think whenever they were 16, she was 16, they got married.
Wow.
Do you know what went on when you were being born?
I do remember a couple. I don't remember. Right. I know my parents told me a couple things.
I would ask my mom these kind
She
of
wouldn't
questions.
even remember giving birth to you, right?
She would laugh. She was like, I'm kind of sketchy on you. There were 7 of you, kind of sketchy on that, So that story, kind of passed us by. Do you know the source of your name?
Yes.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yes. I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, the song.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
And it's my mom's middle name.
My grandfather's name is, on my father's side, John Floyd Hall.
And that was almost your name.
There was a discussion that I would be called Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness. Hey, Floyd. Do you know some things about what happened when your brothers or sisters were being born?
No.
Neither do I. Same thing.
Yeah, nothing about that.
Do you know which person in your family you look most like? My dad.
Yeah,
I'm
you
like
do.
my dad.
You look a lot like your dad, and your son looks a lot like you.
He sure does, yeah. Do you know which person in your family you act most like? My dad.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know some of the illnesses and injuries that your parents experienced when they were younger?
I think so. I think I know this.
I don't know that.
You don't know that? Okay.
Do you know some of the lessons that your parents learned from good or bad experiences? See, now, I don't know any of that. I wish I had this list at dinner time to go, hey, Mom, tell me this.
Yeah.
Do you know some things that happened to your mom or dad when they were in school? My dad lived in the city, but somehow he transferred himself to my mother's school until they found out about him and kicked him out and pushed him back to the city school.
I remember my dad talking about he went to a Polish Catholic grade school.
Yeah.
Through 8th grade. And I remember him telling the story of when a young girl in his class died, maybe 4th grade, 5th grade, and he had to be a pallbearer.
Whoa.
And how hard that was. Can you imagine like being a little kid and trying to get your head around that?
No. It's a different time. They looked at death differently than we would. Do you know the national background of your family?
Yes.
Yes. We talked about that a lot, right? Do you know some of the jobs that your parents had when they were young? Yeah. Do you know some
My
of
mom worked at the Babette shop.
The Babette shop? Was that like a fashion store?
That was the dress shop at Kaufman's downtown.
Oh.
And you had to wear gloves to get into it. You know how like no shirt, no shoes, no service?
Yes.
This was no gloves.
No gloves. That's
no
refined.
No gloves, no service.
White gloves. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know some awards that your parents received when they were young? I don't know. I think my dad was just fortunate to be alive. Do you know the names of the schools that your mom went to?
Yes.
The schools that your dad went to you?
Yes.
Do you know about a relatives whose face froze in a grumpy position because he or she did not smile enough?
Well, that's how everybody looks in old photographs. Nobody
Pretty
ever
flat.
smiled.
Well, in our family photographs, my mom had, like so many photo albums.
Do you someone still have those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
And what I loved looking at those photo albums was before they had kids, like my family, all this like extended family, they got together and they had parties all the time. So there's parties that like them, Halloween parties, Christmas parties, picnics outside, everyone's holding a beer.
And smoking a cigarette.
Exactly.
Yep.
And you think, I wish I would have seen those guys.
And you know
then.
what they're eating? You remember those buttermints? They used to sell them in a box in the grocery store.
No.
And they were like on the top shelf. So if you had like all like your Oreos or like regular things or like M&Ms, that sort of thing in the aisle.
Yeah.
Above that would be the boxes that were cellophane wrapped that were like fancier, a little more expensive. That's what my parents would buy for parties. And I used to think, what would I have to do to get invited to one of those?
To get a buttermint.
To get a buttermint. Now, I don't even know.
Do they still make them?
I don't know.
A buttermint. And
I'm surprised that doesn't ring a bell to you.
No, it doesn't. Would it be like those mints that they put on your pillow, like you go to a fancy hotel?
I think that, look, okay, they are still available.
A buttermint.
Yeah, buttermints are still available. But that was, here they are right here. But they were, see that? Does that look,
yes.
you know what I'm talking about? They're like kind of creamy. They kind of dissolve in your mouth when
very
you had
nice.
them. I mean, once I tasted them, I thought this was, I mean, they're everything I thought they would be.
That's sophisticated. The
to
buttermints.
me, it was. That's what happened at those parties.
Anyway.
Did your parents play cards?
Oh, man, did they play cards. I mean, all those, my mother had a bunch of sisters and, extended family. They'd get together and play. And of course, as married couples, they'd get together and they'd play cards. Again, pre-kids, with their best friends.
Pre-Netflix.
Right. They played bridge. They played any number of games.
What about, did they bowl?
My dad and one of my uncles bowled. Yeah. But to this day, my sisters still play cards. And me, I missed all that. I don't know cards like my sisters.
You don't like cards.
Well, because I don't know them.
Well,
my sisters know them.
And because
my wife knows
your
cards.
Your wife is really good at cards. So there's no, let me just say, there's no point in you ever playing cards with your wife.
Yeah.
Because she'd smoke you without even
Without a doubt.
trying.
Trying. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, family history, the root of all
really
things,
good.
20 questions.
How about I put that up too?
Okay, that's
on
good.
social media, because that would be a fun thing for maybe people to take
print out
advantage
and then
of
take
on
with them
Thanksgiving.
to Thanksgiving. Very
I
good.
like it. All right, coming up next, how did our picks from Friday turn out? We talked about the Pitt game, the Pens game, and last night's Steeler debacle.
Yeah.
We'll revisit that and see where we are.
Christy, Kath, and I. All right.
More of the Floyd and Kathy show coming up.
So each Friday, John and Christy and I make our picks,
Yeah.
hometown teams for the weekend, and
Bunch of homers.
and something really upsetting's happened. I just want to just come right out and say that.
I feel good about it, whatever that is, because I think I might know.
Yeah.
I was kind of smiling last night.
Yeah. So, if you would ask, probably which one of us knows more about sports?
I'll be you.
Why is that not translating into this game that we're playing? Why? I tell you, John, you have leaped forward.
Thank you.
You've leapt. You've leaped?
Leapt.
I think it's probably either way. You've leaped, John,
Jockey
and you're now
nimble.
tied for the lead with Christy.
Good.
And I am lagging behind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to take, and yet it is what it is. So, for the Pitt game, Pitt played Virginia on Saturday.
That was a great game.
And not only, so the actual score was 48-38. And not only, we all picked the winner because
Yeah.
we all picked Pitt, but you picked the closest.
Did I?
You picked 38-28.
Okay.
And so you got 2 points out of that,
Excellent.
which was frustrating. And then when it came time for the Pens and the Leafs, Christy, is Miss Hockey.
I know she is.
And the Leafs are a really good team. So why would we not pick the Pens to lose that game?
I don't know.
We knew more, and we both chose that the Pens would lose. And you, being a homer, just picked the Pens, and somehow they won
They won.
2-0.
Yep.
And so you got another point out of that.
Fabulous.
And I got
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, good.
Christy got nothing. And then it came time for last night's game, and we all knew the writing was on the wall that the Steelers weren't coming
I
out
felt
with a
bad
W there.
not choosing, picking the Steelers.
I didn't really.
I did.
No, because I've suffered.
I never do that. I always want to go. Let's go. Be a homie. Right?
Yeah, so the final score last night was 41-37, and I can't believe that either of those teams scored that many points.
I can't either.
I just cannot believe it. Anyway, I thought it'd be 21-20 Chargers. You thought it'd be 29-7. Boy, you really stink.
Well, I was really hoping for go Steelers.
So you were 30 points off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we each got a point for picking the right winner, but Christy was closest.
Okay.
So she got 2 points out of that. So overall, you guys are tied for the lead.
Good.
Okay?
As it
And
should be.
I am falling into obscurity.
Yep. Now, how about the weird thing? When you're watching sports now, this is so that everything is about the betting.
I hate that.
What is that? That's like changed the landscape of watching
the whole
sports.
thing.
Because if you're a kid growing up, instead of you like rooting for your team, you're rooting for the point spread, right? Or you're rooting for your fantasy football. And it's like
It's ripped the fun out of it.
I think so.
I mean, for crying.
Yeah, it really has.
I think it's
changed
really
the nature
sad.
of sports.
It's human nature, isn't it, to look at a game like football that is that exciting and decide it's not exciting enough.
Right. And then
And
you
so
have
we
to
have
add
we have to add something to it.
layers of money to it.
Yeah. And then if we add layers of money to it, that'll make it
I
exciting.
have no connection to that
Me neither.
whatsoever.
I don't want any connection
No,
to that
neither do
because
I.
I don't trust myself
I told
around
you
anything like that.
Years ago, I bartended with a guy, and oftentimes we'd bartend together on a Sunday, and he was into sports betting. He was a New York Giants fan of all things. So there you are in Manhattan.
And right now he's in despair.
Oh, you're working, a bar, and you're busy, and he's not even paying attention to what's going on in front of him. He's worried about losing his money, and of course he lost more often than he won.
he did.
Which, of course, and then he was horribly miserable because of that. So he was even worse of a worker. Anyway. There's my bias
I
against
shouldn't
sports
come
betting.
I shouldn't come anywhere close to gambling, John.
Why?
Just because I don't want to get into that.
No, please don't. Hey, thanks for being with us. Podcast is up and running.
Sure is.
Look for us on Facebook
Facebook,
and
Twitter, you name
we're
it.
out there, and we've got stuff to post as well. Check that out.
Have a great night, Pittsburgh.